What's good, you guys? Welcome back to another banger. So today we got another story time for you guys, back-to-back story times. You guys saw the title of the video. Today I'm be telling you guys about the first and only time I've ever taken edibles in class. So we got this cool little joint rolled up, nothing major, some slight, a little baby joint. You guys know the deal. We're about to spark this up, we're about to get faded, and let's get into this. Cheers, guys. This is fire. All right, guys, so like I was saying, this happened my senior year of high school. So it's a Thursday, right? I'm in class, and usually on Fridays what I do is I like to get lit. Like my other story times, I always get lit on Fridays. At this point I had never taken an edible in my life. I believe this was my first edible ever, like in class and everything. So I remember going up to one of my boys and I asked him, I'm like, yo, I want to get high, I want an edible, like do you got any plugs? Because I had plugs for like weed and stuff like that, but I didn't really know where to pick edibles, So my boy recommends his homie. He's like, yeah, pick it up from him. I always get my edibles off him, they're fire. So I'm like, cool. So I tell him, I'm like, yo, can you give it to me tomorrow? Because tomorrow's Friday, I'm trying to get lit tomorrow. He was like, yeah, no problem. So boom, I go home. The next day it's Friday. I wake up, I get to class. I go to first period, and his homie hits me up. He's like, yo, meet me outside this building after first period. So I'm like, cool. So first period is over, and I meet him outside the building. I meet him right outside my first period, like, building right there. I give him like 10 bucks and he gives me an edible. Now this edible was a brownie. This brownie was about, like, I want to say like this big. It was a good sized brownie. It was a good chunk. Like, it wasn't too bad. So he gives it to me and I give him the money, whatever. Boom, we do the little exchange, and like boom boom boom, a little swap, and I got the edible. Now at this point I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna save this for the period right before lunch. Now the reason I did this was because in my head, so the average edible takes about half an hour to an hour to hit usually, right? So in my head I'm planning it. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna take it at the beginning of this period before lunch. That way it'll kick in right at lunch and I could just munch out. So I go to my second period, boom, and then I go to my third period. Now my third period I was an assistant for a PE teacher, and I didn't do shit. So I would just go with the homies to their weight training and we would go get a workout in. So I do that and I pop the edible. I take the whole thing, like I straight munch it, like I just devour that bitch. Like I straight eat it. Like if I was in an eating contest, I just straight devour the bitch. I didn't want to save it because I was like, I don't want the high to be spread out. I just wanted to kick in, So I eat the whole thing, and then we go to the weight room, and usually I work out, but this time I was like, nah, just in case it kicks in while I'm lifting weights, I don't want to look stupid. So I'm just chilling, chopping it up with the homies. We're just chilling, we're just talking shit, we're just bullshitting, So the class ends, the bell rings, and we're on our way to lunch. Now, once I get to lunch, the edible has yet to kick in. Like, I'm still sober. I'm like sober as can be. And in my head, I'm already starting to think like, this edible's trash. Like, I'm already talking shit about it. I'm like, yeah, this edible sucks. Like, my homies were like, you're not high yet? And I was like, hell no, this shit sucks. And my homie who recommended the plug to pick up the edible from, like, I had him in my fourth period, so I was gonna see him regardless. So in my head, I'm like, bro, I'm gonna go tell this dude that his plug is trash, Like I'm already like in my mind, this edible's boof. Like, it's not gonna kick in ever, because an hour had already passed by, So we get to lunch. I buy like a Gatorade and a bag of chips, just in case, like, I need something to eat, and if it does kick in, like, for the slim chance it does kick in, like, I need something to eat. So we get to the end of lunch and I'm still sober, and I'm like, fuck, I'm like super disappointed. I'm like, what the fuck, like, I just wasted 10 bucks. So me and my boys, it was like me and 3 other homies who had the same fourth period. Now for fourth period, we had a film studies class. We would just fucking watch movies, like talk about like the history of cinema and shit like that, But anyways, after lunch, we're walking to that class. We're walking to our film studies class, me and my homies. And I kid you not, as we're walking, like, I'm telling you, in my head, I'm like, man, this edible sucks. Like, this was trash. This was the worst 10 bucks. This was the worst business exchange in the history of business, right? Like, I'm thinking like, I just made the worst deal in history. I remember we're walking to class as we're walking up to the building, like, I'm walking up to the building, I'm looking at the building, and as we're walking, I just remember I'm like looking left to right, like, you're just like scanning the area, you're just looking left to right, I swear to God, like when I would look left and I would look right, it felt like my vision was delayed. It felt like there was a lag in like real life. Like if my head was over here, my vision would still be like, it was like, you know, it was like a little like behind from like my movements. And I was like, what the fuck? It almost felt like I was in slow-mo. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I was like, yo, what the fuck? And then I'm like, damn. So I'm thinking like my vision's a little like, it's getting like I'm starting to feel the head high. Like I'm for sure feeling the head high. But my body still feels cool. Like I'm still able to walk. I'm still able to like, you know, talk and do all this shit. Or so I thought I was, you know? And I remember I get to class and my boy's already sitting there. You know, the one that recommended me this edible, he's already sitting down. I remember I walk up to him. I'm like, hey, bro. Like, this edible's trash, bro. Like, I'm telling him, I'm like, yo, this edible didn't even kick in. This edible's trash as fuck, bro. Like, I remember telling him that. He looks up at me because he was sitting down and I was just like standing over him. He looks up at me and he just starts dying. He's like, yo. He's like, nah, bro. And I'm looking at him like, what the fuck you talking about? Like, what happened? And he looks at me. He deadass looks at me. He's like, bro. He's like, you straight up mumbled. I don't even know what the fuck you said. Like, you look high as shit. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, nah, no way. Because I felt cool. I was like, no way. And he was like, yeah, bro. He's like, I don't even know what you said because you look high as fuck and you're like out here mumbling. Like, you can't even, like, I didn't even make a word. Like, I didn't understand the words you said. And I'm like, what? No way. He was like, yeah. And I was like, and I told him, I'm like, damn, bro, I think it just kicked in then because I've been feeling cool this whole time. You know, like I was chopping it up with the homies and everything. And he was like, damn. He was like, hey, then probably then. And I told him he had asked me. He was like, hey, when did you take it? I was like, oh, like right in the middle of third period. And he was like, oh, then yeah. He's like, because he had told me, he was like, yeah, when I take them, they usually take about 2 hours to kick in. Which I didn't know edibles. Like, I'm telling you, I thought your normal edible kicks in within an hour. And after that, it's just trash. Like, I didn't think it was going to kick in after that. I had already planned for the worst, you know? So anyways, he tells me I'm high as fuck. And I'm like, fuck. So I remember I just sit back down. In that class, I used to sit like next to the homies. Like, we used to sit like in a little group. We just chop it up. So that period, I remember the teacher puts on a movie. Because I told you, it's a film studies class. All we would really do is watch movies and like talk about like the art of cinema, you know, like just like how to like pan shots, do all that stuff, you know. She puts on a movie. I don't remember what movie it was, but if I remember correctly, like I believe it was a black and white movie because like we would always watch different types of movies, from horror to comedy to like old cinema, like black and white silent films. We would do like a lot of that shit. And usually when it was a boring ass movie I didn't like, I would just be on my phone or I'll just like take a nap or some shit. But I remember so perfectly, bro. Like, she puts on this movie and this is how I knew like the edible had finally kicked in and I was high as fuck. She put on the movie. It was a black and white film. Most boring film of all time. But I swear to God, I could not stop looking at the screen. Like, I was sitting in my desk just staring at the film. Like, I was just staring at it. Like, and I didn't move my head like one single time. I swear to God, it felt like I was looking at the screen for 5 seconds and then the bell rang and the class was over. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, in my mind, like in my head, I'm like, no way, dude. Did I just like, I was like, did I just fucking like advance time or something? Like, what the fuck? Like, ain't no way this was an hour. And so the bell rings and then I'm going to my last class of the day. We had 6 classes. I technically only had 5. 4 that I really had to show up for, but like I had 5 because my 6th period was a home period. So I would go home. I would go home right after 5th. So my 5th period, I remember, bro, I had calculus 5th period, bro. At this point, I'm fucking obliterated. I'm gone. This edible has whooped my ass. I'm ready to tap out, bro. Like, I'm ready to fucking quit. And then I remember, I'm like, I'm 18. Like, at that point, I had just turned 18. So I'm like, damn, I'm 18 now. So I could sign myself out. I remember, I walk in the 5th period. First thing I do, I walk up to the teacher because I'm a senior. I'm still trying to graduate. I remember they told us that if you like have too many like absences or whatever, you don't get to graduate. Some bullshit like that. You know, I'm sure they tell everybody that. But I'm like, I ain't trying to go with all this bullshit. So I was like, well, let me just check in with the teacher, you know? I just wanted to make sure I check in with the teacher. He don't mark me absent, you know? And I'm going to tell him. I told him. I walked in and I was like, yo. I was like, can I get a pass so I can check out? And he was like, yeah, no problem. So he gives me the pass. And that teacher was cool as fuck. Shout out to him. He would always sign me the pass too. He would never like ask nothing. He would mark me there, sign me the pass, and then go about my day. So shout out to him. Anyways, he gives me the pass. And I'm out. like calculus was hard as fuck for me. Like I never understood shit. Like I would always copy out people because I just didn't understand it. Like I'm good at math, but bro, once you start throwing letters in like that, like what the fuck? Like that's crazy. But anyways, I get out the class and I go back to the parking lot and I hop in my whip. And I'm chilling there for I'm chilling there for like a good 20 minutes until I feel like I'm cool to drive, you know? Because I've driven high at that point, but I wasn't too sure, you know? Like, and if you're watching this, don't drive high. That shit not safe. That shit not cool. Don't be doing that. So yeah, I'm chilling in the car, listening to music. You know, after sitting in the car for like 20 minutes, you know, I start the car and I drive home. Boom. And I make it home safe, you know? I'm pulling up in the driveway, bro. To this day, this is the only time this has ever happened to me. I pull up in the driveway, you know, I hit the brake and I'm going to put the car in park. And for some reason, my high ass, like the brownie had just taken over my soul at that point. My high ass, dead ass, turns off the car, takes out the keys, and I'm hopping out. I hop out the whip and I plant my foot down, my left foot down. And I remember I just see the floor moving like below my foot. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I look up and I realize that the car's rolling backwards. And I'm like, what the fuck? And my high ass is trying to comprehend everything. And it took like a cool second for everything to click. And then I look down at the shifter and I see that it's still in drive. So the driveway's like at an angle. So like the car just started rolling backwards. And I'm like starting to panic. I'm like, nah, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck? Like I'm too high for this shit. You know, like I'm like, yo, what the fuck? Like ain't no way this should happen. And luckily, there was like this little pothole. Like a small little pothole, but it was enough to like where the rear tire just like fell in the hole, and it was like enough to stop the car from like rolling down the street. So once we hit the pothole, once we like the car stopped, it like completely stopped. I fucking put the key back in the ignition and I put it back in, like, you know, I put it back in drive or whatever, and I just pull up and I make sure I park it this time. I park it, and usually I don't put the e-brake on. Like I don't fucking know, like that's just a thing I don't do. Ever since then, like I would always put the e-brake. Like normally I would never put the e-brake. I don't know, it was just a bad habit. But since that day, I would always make sure to put the e-brake. I was like, what the fuck? Like, that shit was crazy. Like, I could have crashed this hoe. Like, that's how high I was. This edible took over my mind, body, and soul to the point where I was just on autopilot and, like, I didn't even know what the fuck I was doing. Like, boom, I parked the car safely. We make it home. We safe and sound. Make sure there's no dents on the car. Everything was cool, you know? And I just remember I walk in. I just remember going to my room and I just passed the fuck out. Like, I just knock out. And I don't wake up until, like, 5 o'clock. And at that point, the edible had already like started to wear off, you know? That shit could have been all bad though, cause like, I remember there was like a car down the street that was parked too. So like, that pothole wasn't there, that car probably would have rolled. Nah, I probably would have saved it by then, you know? Who knows, you think so? I feel like my reflexes would have been cool enough to like, I would have been able to save it, you know? Who the fuck knows? Maybe, I don't fucking know. I believe so. I feel like I got pretty fast reflexes. For like someone who smokes, you know, weed, I feel like I got pretty good reflexes. I feel like I would have saved it either way before like I hit something, but that pothole for real, that pothole for real saved my life though. Moral of the story, you guys, don't drive while you high. It's not safe, you know, it's pretty dangerous. It can be dangerous, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So just don't do it. But anyways, you guys, I think I'm gonna wrap it up right there. That was the time, the first and only time I took an edible in class. Because after that experience, I was just like, nah, I'm just not gonna do it no more. After that, I strictly took edibles like when I was at home, like never when I'm in public and shit like that, because sometimes they just kick my ass, you know? But anyways, thank you guys so much if you guys stick it out to the end. I appreciate you guys. Make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.